All right, we are live. It is Hit the Books time, part of the Hammer Betting Network. I'm Brad Powers, alongside the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Joey Knish. Guys, we're breaking down, recapping what happened in the college football week number 4. Who impressed us? Who didn't? We're taking a look at the early biggest games of the week. And, of course, at the end of the show, it's that time you've all been waiting for. Best bets. They continue to cash. They're showing profits so far. That's all you can ask, Mr. Knish. But first and foremost, because I am a man of the people, and the people want to know each and every week Mr. Knish's thoughts on his beloved covering Detroit Lions. Mr. Knish, good afternoon.
I mean, it's insane. They just don't. Dan Campbell's the greatest of all time. He's the best coach and the best ATS coach in history. Like, it's absolutely phenomenal. I don't know how they keep doing it. So, devastating loss at the end for some of us that are holding some Lions tickets. But, I mean, the man just keeps printing. I didn't think it was happening this week again. But I don't know how they're doing it with the injuries piling up. But just cover, baby. I don't know. I mean, how can you even say? It's like one of those where you're like, oh, shit, maybe the market, they just find a way. Yeah, it's broken all the models. They just find a way. The Dan Campbell model. I don't know why I'm even betting on college football anymore. I just bet the Lions every week, and I won't have to worry about anything.
I hear you on that. And speaking of finding a way, a team that continues to do it in Norman, Oklahoma, Kansas State, I'm going to lead it with that as far as teams that impressed me. First starting with their quarterback, who's been a bum, let's just be honest, for most of his career at Nebraska, and not off to a good start first 3 games at Kansas State. But Adrian Martinez not only played like the Heisman candidate, he played like the Heisman favorite on Saturday night. Kansas State, double-digit underdog wins outright, puts a little bit of a somberness to that first year under Brent Venables for Oklahoma. That was the team to me that is one that made a biggest impression as far as really impressing me, especially coming off an outright upset loss against Tulane the week prior. So big thumbs up to Adrian Martinez. Good for that kid who's taken a lot of flack, even from a guy like myself throughout the years. And Kansas State bouncing back in a big way there. Any teams impressed you? Maybe even some thoughts on that Kansas State game?
I mean, his passing yardage prop for that game was 141 yards. He goes over to, he just, like, they hadn't thrown the ball literally downfield all year. And it was just a class, like, it reminded me of like an old North Dakota State when, Kleinman was there, where they just lined up and were absolutely able to just keep blowing Oklahoma off the football, win in the trenches on both sides. Even a team that's at a significant, they don't get 5 stars. They barely get 4 stars, just a significant talent disadvantage on both sides, and just man-balled them to death. And if anything, I think my takeaway would be the Big 12, like 1 to 12 is like, they're barely any separation. I mean, Kansas is up there, like Baylor, Iowa State, barely playing. Like, there's just no, I mean, even going in, like, what's your power ranking from 1 to 12? Like, a touchdown? Is every team within a touchdown? Like, I mean, it's just a conference that feels like one of 10 teams, if you get the right victories this year, could end up winning it. And you thought a little bit like maybe coming off of last week that Oklahoma was separating themselves up a tier, or Texas could up a tier, and they both lose to inferior opponents last week. So Yeah, that was that was surprising to me. A couple of teams that kept it rolling. You're the team in Columbus that's looking starting to look pretty
Yeah.
frisky on offense is good, and our boys in Mobile, Alabama, that I thought was I had some La Tech. I thought 2 touchdowns was crazy. Blew them off the map, and I tune in to see a Brad Powers release this morning, and what does he do? He goes right back to the well with some more Mobile, Alabama against what was the division favorite going into the season in Louisiana Lafayette, and now South Alabama's a 10-point road chalk at Lafayette. What a season they're having so far. Hopefully it keeps rolling.
Yeah, I mean, that's 4 straight covers now by 18 points per game for South Alabama. We can talk that game more later. I forgot to mention best bets at the top. I will mention it here because this is one where we lost. I think it was me. I was on
I know where
Clemson
you're going
last week. My goodness. I mean, I was impressed with Wake Forest. I mean, pre-game announced that Wake Forest going to be missing 3 guys in their secondary. Ended up proving, DJ had a good game throwing the football. But what I was impressed with, Wake Forest offensively was able to have their way. I mean, consistently running and passing on Clemson's defense. I was really impressed with Wake Forest's performance there in a game and a series that they never really step up and compete with Clemson. They did. So I was impressed with Wake Forest. You briefly mentioned it. I know why, because you're sporting the Michigan shirt there. But, I mean, the Buckeyes, the last 2 weeks offensively, that's the best offense in the country like we expected, folks. And that's right now one of 3 teams that I think is a legitimate national title contender: Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State, just like we thought coming into the season. So Ohio State, after a first couple of games, struggle offensively, looks the part after destroying Wisconsin. Any other teams impress you?
I wanted to count. Is there anybody outside? Because we would have thought. One, who do you think's in that driver's seat for the 4th playoff spot? I think Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State are getting in. I wouldn't say. I thought some teams on the fringe were like Oklahoma, Texas, USC, who barely escapes on it.
Best bet winner, Oregon State here.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to get that. Does 11-1, even Michigan, took a step back, obviously, in terms of what I thought the ceiling could be with their performance against Maryland. So it looks like a 3-team race, and for that 4th playoff spot, that seems totally wide open now at the moment.
I don't know who it is. Clemson, USC. Both those teams have extreme flaws. Michigan, maybe they go 11-0. They lose a close game to Ohio State. They're in the mix. I do think we'll see two SEC teams probably again. I don't see anybody really beating Georgia or Alabama. But, let's talk about teams that didn't impress. Georgia didn't have that great of a performance, winning by 17 over Kent State as a 45-point favorite. That was the first time we've seen a big-time chink in the armor of Georgia. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because I've seen them just absolutely hammer Oregon and South Carolina. So we'll learn a little bit more, maybe not this week against Missouri, but maybe not until the Alabama game in the SEC championship game because they don't play anybody, Georgia. So we'll see. There was a little chink there. A team, obviously, I can't believe we waited 5 minutes to mention them. How about that speed and space, your former offensive coordinator, Josh Gaddis and Mario Cristobal, Miami Hurricanes, getting legitimately beat outright as a 25-point favorite against Middle Tennessee. I know there were some turnovers early, but I'm here to tell you there wasn't a lot of flukiness there. I thought Middle Tennessee was the better team. That's a team big time down arrow, and I'm not sure the Texas A&M performance is going to age too well either. So Miami way down in my book. Other teams that were really disappointing for you.
Well, one that I will have to mention was a double consensus total. It was our Gene Chizik seeing if he can get the defense together. I don't think Notre Dame did anything fantastic, and I think they just lined up, ran the football, and North Carolina didn't have an answer for it, didn't have any adjustments for it. And just, I don't know. I saw you tweet that. I don't know how many more weeks you can run this. Have somebody off the staff come on and take over for this guy. It has been one of the worst coordinator hires in the last 5 years of college football. Yep. I don't think any possible person you could have put in charge of this defense could have done a worse job. Completely disaster. And I don't know. I mean, this is a UNC team that should be competing with the talent they have on the roster and how bad the ACC is, competing for a shot to go to the ACC title game. And instead, this defense is just sinking them. So horrible effort from them. And I think the ceiling is a team that potentially could win 8 or 9 games is more looking at probably a 6-win season. Because I don't know what they can do now at this point to get it straightened out. You've made your bed. You had the bye week. Nothing changed. And Chiswick is just going to sink what could be a team that should have a lot higher potential with the talent they have.
It's not only poor coaching, but I mean, if you watch the game, obviously we did. We both had, best bets on that game. I mean, players are fighting on the sideline. Matt Brown's getting an unsportsmanlike penalty. Total lost control. And you're right. Notre Dame really didn't do anything great. I mean, I thought Tommy Rees called a smart game. He just played everything. How stupid North Carolina was defensively, played all that against them. Lined up, played man ball. I mean, Notre Dame also fumbled into the end zone. Otherwise, I mean, that Notre Dame offense that couldn't even get first downs against Marshall and Cal nearly put up a 50 spot on that North Carolina defense. And I'm stunned. I know there's weather, and we'll get to this later in the show. But are you kidding me? A total of a North Carolina game at 50 this week? Oh, my goodness. I mean, I know Virginia Tech sucks offensively, but so does Notre Dame. So more on that later. North Carolina's defense, I mean, that's one of those rare instances where I think you do have to get rid of a guy. It's a very short sample size. Do I think Mac Brown's going to? No. I don't know. I think they should get rid of Mac Brown. 3 straight top 15 recruiting classes, and that's the effort you put out on that field. They're not lacking talent defensively. No. It's a bunch of 4-star kids.
Yeah.
I mean, if you follow recruiting rankings, I mean, they can't be off on every single kid. So, yeah, that was a dumpster fire. And speaking of dumpster fires, I don't know if you had anything in the game. I did. I had Oregon. That endgame fiasco for Oregon, Washington State, I mean, it aged me significantly. Oregon wasn't covering all game. I mean, but I thought they should have been. They were up like 200-some plus yards in the game. They had that horrific turnover, Bo Nix being Bo Nix on the road early in this game. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, yes, finally. We got the right team is covering at the end after that pick six that Oregon gets. And oh my goodness, they give up a 60-yard pass with 20 seconds left. They're at the goal line, give up a touchdown with 1 second left. I don't cover. Yeah, that was not fun. Did you have anything on that game?
You know what? I had some actually under early that the last 5 minutes just, completely blew up from what was looking like. They're not playing pickleball anymore, James Madison, I'll tell you. But yeah, that under was a tough one there. I agree with you as just the last 5 minutes was absolute insanity. And yeah, I see people in the chat. That was one of the great in terms of the other side of the emotional swing, where James Madison fumbles twice inside their own 25 in the first quarter and leads to 2 App State touchdowns. One of the bigger positions I've had on a CFB game this year. You're thinking it's going to be like an absolute, like just devastating. They're come all the way back to get the outright victory. And I think that was well deserved there. So yeah, that was quite the roll of emotion. I had a little of emotion when it was 28-3. I was in a bad place there, wanting James Madison to go back to FCS football, but they're back, and I never doubted them except for that that first 30 minutes. So.
Yeah, that was the best bet on the show. I might have had a little better too on James Madison in that game. I gave that one up. I couldn't believe it. But App State kind of ran out of gas. Roller coaster of emotions. Give them credit. They were up at the start of the game. And then, I mean, obviously James Madison, a better team, final 40 minutes of that one. So that was another winner for us. Any other takeaways? Impressive teams? Not so impressive? Anything else?
I thought Michigan, one of the, I'll do some troll. Michigan State looks dead. They got absolutely hammered by Minnesota. And I didn't even know if it's a meltdown. They've had volume injuries at positions that they don't have a lot of depth in. Their secondary is down. They've got D2 transfers playing in the secondary. Their best D tackle didn't come back. Jaden Reed, the best receiver, does not look right. Their quarterback is getting beat to death every week, and now he's lacking in performance. And I think they're going down at Maryland again this week, unless they're. I mean, they don't
Line
have
says so.
any. Yeah, I mean that line opened up, 2.5, 3 at some places. It got blown up, gone across 7. I thought Maryland looked pretty damn good versus Michigan, put up a good performance. And I don't think Michigan State, unless they get healthy in a hurry, they've got an insane next month too. They could be looking at a 4-8 type of season.
95 million.
Yeah, yeah, 95 guaranteed. That I think Mel, he hit the jackpot last year in the portal with Walker. A lot of the guys that he's brought in this year aren't coming to fruition, and on top of the injuries, he hasn't had enough recruiting cycles to build up the depth. And I think they are a straight. I mean, they could be looking at getting blown out here the next couple of weeks. And Minnesota driver's seat in a Big Ten West. They are legit, and I think they have a chance to roll through that division. And I mean, they'll obviously lose to Ohio State or Michigan in the title game, but it'll be a nice story there for row the boat to get to the championship game, because it looks to me like they are now head and shoulders above the Wisconsins, or especially any of the lower tier in that division, the Iowa. So I think Minnesota's the real deal, and boy, did they put it on them.
They did, and Minnesota double-digit favorite this week against Purdue, who's got quarterback question marks. Illinois is playing well defensively, so we'll see. That's an intriguing game for me this week. Illinois, Wisconsin, kind of a battle between some markets. Our market was very anti-Wisconsin early, but some buyback a little bit this morning on Wisconsin in that one. Speaking of this upcoming weekend games, got a lot of them. We got 4 ranked on ranked matchups this week. I'm going to start actually with the Alabama-Arkansas, a game that probably lost a little bit of steam as far as, Arkansas doinking a kick on the top of the upright at the end of the Texas A&M game. Otherwise, they're unbeaten coming in this matchup. Alabama's looked like Alabama the last couple of weeks. They easily went and cover over Vanderbilt last week. Dominant performance for the Crimson Tide. Early line has Alabama now up to 17. I don't disagree with that. That's probably a natural move there. I'm wondering if that kick goes through the uprights for Arkansas, if we're dealing with a 16 on this line right now. But I made 63 bets yesterday at Circa. This was not one of them, side or total. I don't have a bet, dude. Do you have a bet on this one?
I was in on some early Bama. I wouldn't buy now at the 17, but I this is one of those where Arkansas has come off, a couple of brutal games. Now they're dealing with volume injuries as well, and I think they've kept up the performance level pretty well. And even the FCS game where Petrino comes in, he's got a good FCS team. They've been in some battles now for the last month. Bama gets off of a cakewalk. I think this is what they're just setting up here where the injuries I think is overcoming, and you're going up against now you're getting a big talent disadvantage where Bama's had a couple of weeks to get ready for it. I don't think Alabama's offense has been super impressive at any level, except when they played the Utah State and the Vanderbilts, but I just can't get to Arkansas here, even though the line's getting up there. It's one of those that's just going to be a pass for me where it's at now. Even if this crosses, I just don't really want to, when you factor in the spot and the injuries and what Arkansas has had to go through to get here now, it just doesn't sit right for me in a game that could line up to where I think they might just get run out. And again, the line kind of reflects some of that inflated ability there. So it would be a pass for me where it's at now, but it wouldn't surprise me to see a dominant Bama victory, even though I'm not super high on what they've done so far this season. It's just one of those that if Arkansas was healthier and in a little better spot, that I think it would have had more of an intriguing. I think this one though could be a comfortable Bama win.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those players on the sideline of that game in the final minute were distraught big time. So I don't know if Alabama's the team I want to play after such a heartbreaking loss last week for Arkansas. Staying in the SEC, this is one where we have seen line movement. I got to tell you, I'm looking at the old Don Best screen right now, and I'm seeing a couple of 7s. Mississippi favored by now 6.5 in most books, but now 7 at a couple. against Kentucky. A Kentucky team has struggled against a backup quarterback in Northern Illinois last week, but it's not like Ole Miss didn't struggle. I mean, they got up big against Tulsa and then had to hang on for dear life. And that one, a pair of unbeaten SEC teams, I did not have a position early on in this one. I thought the 4 was more of a fair line, and I'm a little bit surprised with all the Ole Miss money. Where are you at on this game as I fire up my Circa account and make a bet on Kentucky +7?
Yeah, I had, you know what? Not again. I wasn't looking to really get. I think these are two teams that have had some fortune to get where they're at. Both being a touch overvalued. Both had some underwhelming performances against lower tier. I mean, if Bryn doesn't get hurt last week, I think Tulsa is potentially live in that game to win it outright. And even going to the backup, we're never really in danger of not covering. Kentucky has just had, and this is one of the larger regular season win positions that I've had was Kentucky under. That's now a bit underwater. God, they were unimpressive against Northern Illinois. I'm a little, I know, a couple of the numbers guys I talked to actually had this around 7.5, but I don't have a, again, if it could only be a Kentucky for me at 7. I also, if it crossed through 7.5, that's where I was going to buy. It looks like it's mostly settled in the best number at 7. Ole Miss has just, again, that's now stylistically, though, I think Ole Miss has more trouble with a team that's going to play offense like Tulsa than a team that's going to go like Kentucky. But again, do I want to be lining up to lay a touchdown there? No, I thought the earlier number was more in the fair range. So it would be Kentucky or pass for me, but again, not one that I've lined up to actually invest in.
Yeah, not a best bet for me, but you know me, I'm not afraid of volume. So, I mean, at 7, and, one of the things we do, we're looking for numbers to make a bet. +7 is good enough for me on Kentucky. I mean, I look, Mark Stoops, I think, does about as good of a job as anybody in the country, considering that he doesn't have the resources that a lot of other people do in the SEC. So, +7, I think, is a little rich there on the Ole Miss side. Another ranked-on-ranked matchup. We're going to go to the Big 12, and we got a decent one here. Oklahoma State taking on Baylor. A Baylor team I bet last week. I was stunned the market was anti-Baylor and flipped Iowa State to as high as a 3-point favorite. And that one closed about 2.5. But Baylor fresh off that win. Oklahoma State fresh off a bye. You talked about at the top, Knish, that the Big 12 is wide open. Here's another game, just like I think every game in the Big 12 this year is probably going to have Big 12 title implications. Baylor right now favored by 2.5. Total's been getting steamed up. I am part of the over there. I think they're treating both of these teams like they were last year when they were defensive, top 10 defensive teams, and they're just not top 10 defensive teams in my opinion this year. So I did take an earlier position on the over. Did you bet this one at all yet?
You know what? I'll throw in a best bet there on that Chris +3. I bet some +3 last night. It looks like that was the only 3 trade in the market. And listen, I was in lockstep.
You're just gonna throw in not wide. I'm all about widely available. You're throwing in best bets at one book.
There you go, and a very big book, Mr. Powers. So listen, that at 3, it's a buy for me. I bought some. I still like that 3 there. Listen, I agree with you. Last week took some Baylor at the 3. Was surprised to see them fading there. This week, though, significantly different opponent. That I agree. Oklahoma State's defense, I think, has a bit. It's got to come down from last year. Obviously, losing Knowles, they played a couple of some cupcakes to start, and then let Central kind of get back and rack up some yards in that. However, the Baylor's offense. I mean, they've kind of gone through the ringer here schedule wise of having some people come off BYU, and then they played Iowa State on the road. Plus, I think the scheme wise, they haven't impressed me offensively. I mean, defensively, they've been able to compete in games, but I think this Oklahoma State team provides challenges that they haven't really faced before against any opponent this year that has looked. I mean, on the flip side of it, where the Oklahoma State defense, I think, is a bit over. I think the offense has looked fantastic. Now, backing Spencer Sanders in key spots over his career has been a little dicey, but I like the 3 here. I think you're getting a good spot for Oklahoma State. I had this more around to pick, and I think talent-wise that they're head-to-head with this Baylor team. especially for the style that Baylor wants to play. They're not one that they want to play physical, play slower, run the ball. I think it's a little bit of a matchup defensively that Oklahoma State can handle. I think offensively, they're going to present some challenges that Baylor hasn't been able to face this year. So this is one to me that I'm a bit higher on Oklahoma State probably than some in the market. So took some pokes at the 3 there and like that getting the field goal. I can't see this getting any better than 3, obviously with 2.5 mostly painted. But I think if it goes to 3 at other places, there'll be buyers there, including more from Joey K.
Yeah, obviously I think 3 is a really good number for obvious reasons. I need to see Oklahoma State play somebody. I mean, come on now. I mean, a tomato cannon at the FCS level, Central Michigan, it was okay. I mean, Central Michigan did come back on them and got the back door in the second half, and then they played an Arizona State team with a lame duck coach. So I'm not there yet on Oklahoma State, at least for this season. I could see it though at 3 playing against Baylor. One more ranked on ranked matchup here. ACC game between NC State and Clemson. We've seen a ton of money come in on the under, and we'll get more to that as far as weather totals here in about 5 minutes. But right now, Clemson, after a much closer, at least as far as I'm concerned, expected win over Wake Forest in overtime last week, laying under a touchdown again against an NC State team that, look, I was really high on coming into the season, bet them over their season win total. They had a ton of returning production from last year. It was a team that went 9-3 in the regular season, including a win over Clemson a year ago. And I just haven't seen it yet from NC State. Now, they haven't played really a lot of great competition, but I wasn't overly impressed with them in the East Carolina game. East Carolina has a better kicker. They lose that game. Texas Tech has a pick 6 turnover. That game was closer than expected. So I did bet Clemson on the openers. I wasn't even thinking weather when I bet it. So I mean, I'm not sure that I can recommend it now, Clemson. Even though if you could tell me the weather is going to be okay, I think Clemson -6.5 is the right side. Well, if you got a hurricane situation, 20-mile-an-hour wind, heavy rain, then I prefer to outside of the under, I prefer not to have a side because it's pretty unpredictable when it comes to turnover variance. So I think Clemson's the right side, but what say you, Knish?
Yeah, this is one of the off-season positions that game of year wise. I was pretty bullish on North Carolina State. Bought up what game of years I could in this game. However, I agree with you that through the early part of the season, they haven't been particularly impressive. Now, again, do I want to back Clemson here with all the factors you mentioned? The fact coming off a tough Wake Forest game in a game that could have some weather with an extremely low total. Not really. It doesn't entice me, particularly. If anything, it'd probably be a little odd. If gun to my head, I would grab one of those 7s on North Carolina State if I was playing it right now. But I am a little leery on on the ability for North Carolina State's passing offense to really have success here. In a game that, especially with there could be some conditions there. And then if you're talking about like man ball to man ball, who's going to line up and have the team that can run it better, I would say Clemson definitely has a little bit more of the the rep there that I could see stopping the run because almost nobody can run on them, and then B having some more with Shipley and DJ to have a little bit more mobility. So it's one that again, it's kind of in the with the weather factors up in the air, and now it's crossing through 7 some places. Not one that I'd be dying to play either way. But it's just one of those going into the season, I thought I was going to be very high in North Carolina State coming into this game. Haven't really seen it. But still not gearing up here to want to lay the 6.5 or anything with Clemson.
Fair enough. Although I will say Wake Forest, screen a man ball, I was shocked they were able to get some rushing on Clemson. I did not expect that at all. Clemson's pass defense is a big time concern moving forward. Maybe not in this game if there's 20-mile-an-hour wind and some weather concerns, but my goodness, Louisiana Tech hit them for a bunch of big pass plays. I didn't make that big of a deal out of it, but man, after what Sam Hartman did, 6 touchdown passes, That might be something to keep an eye on. Not that the ACC is going to give them a lot of good looks, but still.
Yeah.
Or Drew Pine from Notre Dame coming down in a month from now, but whatever. Moving along, I misspoke earlier. There's another ranked-unranked matchup. I'm not used to Florida State being ranked. I think it's been 4 years since they've been ranked in any week. We got the Noles playing host to a Wake Forest team that looked pretty good last week, and yet it's the Noles taking a ton of money here. Florida State up to a 7-point home favorite. I'll have some thoughts. I'll let you go first on this one, but my goodness, Florida State getting a lot of respect. Are you part of this steam on the Noles this morning?
Well, I'll tell you, there was some look-ahead lines last week, and one of my guys, friend of the show, Kyle Franchise KF, there was wanting a position on Florida State, and we were kind of hemming and hawing back and forth about it. I said, Jordan Travis healthy, with some -2.5, -3. I was like, Florida State's been a little, and he was bullish, and I'll hat tip him there. I didn't see this line getting up to a touchdown. I'm a little shocked, and this is one of those. Am I looking to go against this much steam here? I think if it crossed 7, I would have no choice but to take a Wake position. Obviously, is the spot we're coming off a devastating loss for Clemson. Where you're thinking you can get over the hump, you can make an ACC championship run, you lose in overtime there. Now having to come up against a Florida State team that's definitely on the come up, and I think they're one of those teams that is getting better every week. Kind of have Jordan Travis looked like he was back fully healthy. I'm a little surprised there. Was looking that good. They're able to run the ball and be physical on the ground. But number wise, at any number one, I could never lay Florida State now at this number. It's probably one that I'm looking for. To take a small position if I can grab a 7.5. I'm just surprised it's gotten up this high.
Pro line, Ken, right now. Pro line plus 8.5. There we go.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course.
Lay that extra 10 cents too.
But man, oh man, was this one was steamed significantly more than I was. You take A in your early position here?
Yeah, I think absolutely at anything above 7. I was stunned. Here's a little peel behind the curtain. When it comes Sunday morning, I wake up and make my numbers on each game just off the top of my head. What would I make the damn game? I just do every game, side and total. And then I, flip on the thing behind me, the old BP Autotron automation computer. And then what are my power ratings and all the other stuff to say? 7.6 was my power rating, Florida State. So I guess in that regard, I'm not surprised by the steam. But I'm here to tell you, my power ratings aren't always – the end all. It's a starting point of a handicap. So I'll tell you, if I see 7.5, other than places at pro line and faraway places, that's a bet for me on Wake Forest. That's just giving way too much respect for a Florida State team that, let's face it, fortunate to win, to hold on to beat LSU. There was some end game mismanagement there that I'm not sure I'm fully trusting Norvell there. Louisville game could have probably went either way. Kudos for Florida State with a backup quarterback for performing like they did in the second half. I was stunned they just absolutely humiliated Boston College last week. I will say that was very impressive, but we'll see this week. If Wake Forest's mind is right and they can rebound off a big time game against Clemson, I think they're the right side here, but we'll see if they can handle back-to-back weeks with, a not so talented roster playing big games back-to-back weeks. Whether I think the storm will be up through Florida at that point. So if push came to shove, I'd probably lean over. I think Florida State's secondary, and keep in mind, Florida State's got some defensive injuries. I think they could be susceptible there. If Wake Forest can go up and down the field on Clemson's defense, they probably can against FSU. So maybe take a peek at that one if the weather's okay. As I'm saying it, I'm seeing some steam on the under. That figures. Moving along, and I want to mention this game because this is another game that got a bunch of steam. It's a bigger game in the SEC. I think a lot of people, if you haven't looked at the lines yet for this week, might be a little bit surprised Mississippi State's laying more than a field goal against Texas A&M. Maybe not so much when you consider if you watch Texas A&M's offense this season, and then you add in the fact that Anaya Smith is now out for the year after a bad, brutal injury last week against Arkansas. But at 3.5, I don't think that's cheap on a pariah known as Mike Leach, who it's very tough for me to get involved in a lot of his games. I did bet the over in last week's game. I'm certainly not betting the over in this week's game with Jimbo's offense. But did you take an early position? Are you part of the Mississippi State team this morning?
Early position. But again, this is one that I wouldn't bet through the 3 or the 4.5. I mean, Texas A&M though has just been like, even in last week's. I mean, they got the fumble return to completely swing that one.
Yeah.
The offense never really got going. I mean, they were able to run the ball some, and now Nye Smith is out for the year. I don't think it's a passing offense that'll at any point this year it's just not wired correctly, like whether it's the scheme and the quarterback and the lack of talent. I just don't think at any point the passing game is going to be good. And it's good, like Texas A&M to compete is going to have, that's the script. It's going to have to be just them handing the ball off 20 to 30 times and playing. And again, the defense still does not look significantly to me. Now, Mike Leach in certain spots, especially against better SEC defensive coordinators, they're able to shut down. Do I consider DJ Durkin to be in that realm? Not really, but so I agree with you that there's game, especially the LSU game that we had some cowbell a few weeks ago, where they just don't put it. They miss some opportunities. They don't convert in the red zone, and then in the second half they just can't get the ball rolling. So it is very, very tough to decipher kind of how, Leach's games in the SEC, how his offenses are able to perform. Now, with that said, I do think the cowbell defense is a real deal. They should be able to shut down what Texas A&M wants to do. But in a game that's going to be lower scoring, now that it's crossed through the 3, this is one that you really wanted to key in on anything, under 3. The number is going to be very important there. So, again, I'm not lying. This is one where I don't have, we've talked about some games where, a half point here and we're looking up to buy. I'm not really looking to back Texas A&M, even at, for any of the, there's not a realistic buy point for me on Texas A&M here. It was just a early Mississippi State or pass.
I don't know. A 4.5 at Proline Plus. I don't know. That might be a small bet for me. But then again, I don't know. I mean, I really don't like either coach, to be perfectly frank. I mean, you got to respect what Mike Leach has done over his career, but that LSU game has me shook here, and why I don't have a position side or total. I mean, that to me was a Mississippi clear game. It was they were the side, and what they did in the second half has me a little shook. So no bet for me on that one. Before we get to best bets, let me ask you, before I get to some of these crazy movements on the weather totals with the hurricane hitting the Carolinas this weekend, any other games you want to mention, surprising lines for you?
I mean, our boys in now, you mentioned talking where, so I want to ask you, because I know you gave that out earlier. Where are you at on the South Bama ULL? Because this opened up, I have obviously some FOMO of, it opened up 5 and 5.5 and have a big South Bama, conference position. So I was like, yeah, do I really want to even add more exposure, laying some points? But I know you laid it this morning. Where were you on that one, number-wise? And what are you seeing there? Because obviously, this is two teams polar opposite that South Bama is just absolutely crushing every week, and ULL looks extremely disappointing. But kind of it's one of those kind of where are we getting to kind of water find its level here in terms of the number?
It's a really good question, and I'm here to tell you, I don't know on this one. I don't think the market has a handle on either team, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously it's not South Alabama. They covered all 4 games by 18 points per game. I didn't have a handle on South Alabama last week. My number said bet against them.
Yep.
And, of course, they covered, although 2 defensive touchdowns. I mean, that might be a little bit of a worry here, but still, I mean, even then, they still would have won by, double digits, so we're a decent Louisiana Tech team. It's more on the Louisiana side why I gave that out this morning. We thought they would take a step back this year. I thought the first couple games maybe were a little fool's gold. They play an FCS team, pretty much met expectation, exceeded expectation against Eastern Michigan, but because they were +5 in turnovers in that game, they got outgained. And then, it's mainly from what I've seen the last 2 weeks, man. They have played, in my power rankings, 2 bottom 10 teams in Rice and UL Monroe. Nothing fluky. They have been beaten badly at the line of scrimmage and just in the box score. And to do that in consecutive weeks says this Louisiana team might be, when it's all said and done at the end of the season, like a 4-8 type of team South Alabama might be your division champs in the Sun Belt. So it might be one where we're questioning now. Is it expensive? South Alabama almost laying 10. It seems that way now, but it might be at the end of the season. We're like, man, that shit, that was cheap. I mean, that make that power rating now, and South Alabama would be laying 17 by the end of the season. So
I mean, just because ULM is not a good football team. I mean, it's a team that's been on the rebuilding side of things. I mean, just going through like ULL, their identity. I mean, they kind of very similar to a Kentucky team where they just want to line. I mean, they couldn't run the ball against ULM whatsoever. I mean, Chris Smith, 10 carries, 41 yards. Chandler Fields, 10 carries, 26 yards. And on the flip side of things, they're giving up Andrew Henry, 11 carries, 123. You're like, they are getting beat on the line of scrimmage against subpar opponents. And that was their whole identity, in the Sun Belt, was to be able to do it. And they're just not able to do it. So I'm again, I think, where the market tipping point might be there for South Alabama. I don't know.
You can put me down best bet, that win bet there. That's fair enough. -8, give me that. I'll take that. You can mark that down best bet. I'm not afraid. Knish, jumping off the South Alabama train. He was Mr. South Alabama all summer.
This is a must win. We need this one here. I got too much conference. I hope you're right. I will be backing you here. But I agree. I'm a little, last week results a little shook just on both sides of I didn't think South Alabama would be able to kind of have that dominant performance coming off the schedule they played against La Tech, who again think is pretty good. And ULL, Jesus Christ. One else.
Look at the Rice game. I mean, that box score says Rice should have won by like 4 touchdowns. I mean, Louisiana might be a bottom 10 team.
One interesting one here I want to touch on, though. Right. AAC, SMU, UCF. SMU, another team that I'm very invested on in the conference futures. This is what you'd kind of consider a must-win to get those in position to have a ticket window there. There were some rogue 4s out there, so add a little at SMU plus what looks like mostly painted 3.5 now. I still have a little value there on SMU 3.5. I will say, in some discussions I had, with people I bet with there, that this UCF offense has been very much all or nothing. They've either looked dominant and explosive and been able to run it up, or in games like Louisville where they couldn't pick up a first down in the second half. I don't know if SMU's defense really has the horses to kind of shut down UCF in terms of give them the problems that they've had in games. However, I don't think there's too much between these two teams, as hopefully that SMU's been able to scheme a little something up, because Plumlee, when he's put in certain positions there, hasn't really been able to be effective as a passer, and I don't think it's a great UCF defense whatsoever. So again, one that, again, we've seen the total come down here. Now, I'll tell you, this is one, if the weather, this is one I'll be watching with the eye to see if the weather. This is one, if the weather looks okay, I will be playing back over here. It's dipped down now, as many have with the weather. This is one that I will definitely be looking to. I think it's one that should be okay weather-wise. Obviously won't know until a little closer, but it's one I'll definitely have on the radar to play back on some over, because this is dipped too far down if it's not significant weather.
Yeah, full disclosure, I bet UCF yesterday morning. I didn't get to the box score on the UCF game from last week against Georgia Tech. I saw the score. I'm like, yep, played out to expectation. Really didn't. You dived into it. It wasn't that great for UCF in that one. They did struggle offensively against a team that obviously just fired their coach. So, that one required further inspection, and I'm probably regretting a little bit my bet there on Central Florida. I'll still, because we need a little bit of disagreement here. You and I can go head to head on that one. You take SMU plus 3.5. I actually laid 3.5 on one. I laid 3 and 3.5, so I'm okay laying 3.5 against you, buddy. You're 1-0 against me.
Hit the book head to head, baby.
My suspicion is you're going to move to 2-0 against me, but that's okay for the goodness of the show. I'll take you and I can go head to head here.
Man of the people.
Yep. Speaking of man of the people, in front of me, I have the games that could be affected by weather, and I'm here to tell you, I think I want to play against all these idiots that were really steam chasing today. I mean, I get it. Look, I'm part of the steam. I was, betting Liberty Old Dominion yesterday morning. I wasn't even thinking about whether I bet under 54.5. Why? Well, I thought Liberty, might still be down to a third string quarterback. They can't move the football against Akron. I don't think they're moving the football against Old Dominion. So I bet under. Now the line's 42.5. 42.5. My goodness. If they get the backup quarterback back, and we'll see what the weather is. I mean, that's moved 12 points. Another game that I mentioned this kind of briefly earlier, it's moved 9.5 points. Virginia Tech, North Carolina, totals down to 51. Folks, for it to be a 51 in a North Carolina total, there's going to be a monsoon and 20-mile-an-hour winds because, I mean, if Notre Dame's offense can go up and down the field on you, Virginia Tech's pitiful, putrid offense probably could do the same against this Gene Chizik defense. So that's one to keep an eye on. NC State took a lot of money, the Clemson game under. Just keep an eye, folks. I'll say this. Don't bet them right now. Don't be playing unders. You are big-time steam chasing at this point. I think the weather is fully, if not way overboard as far as priced into this. I mean, the expectation with these totals right now is, the forecast is going to be 100% correct, and there's going to be significant weather in all these games, and I just don't think that's going to be the case. I'm going to be looking to play back some select overs. How do you normally treat it? Because I'll be honest with you, I was stunned to see on a Monday morning people run into the window to bet unders in these hurricane totals.
Yeah, this has kind of become the new the new hotness in betting when weather plays come on and there's anything on the radar. I would tell you, and look, a little bit more of a macro conversation. I think some people are going early, and it's low liquidity on totals on Monday. And I think even though that early number is going to be good, I think it's getting pumped down now in some cases. Artificially, where especially on the Monday when it's cheap to kind of keep a number coming down, and then you'll have some groups that are going to play back once the limits start to raise up on, and you get a little bit clearer picture. So where if you're looking at, you mentioned UNC, you mentioned Old Dominion, where those totals now are so low that if you get any kind of sense that the forecast is even going to be moderate or okay, you're talking about 6-8 points of value hitting the over there, and being able to get significantly more liquidity on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday than you would be on a Monday. So I think there's a little bit of manipulation going on. I think there's a little bit of overreaction going on, and I agree with that. This is kind of the world we live in nowadays, where people aren't going to wait until we're a part of that. Where,
I know, I am too.
Yeah, where people aren't, you're not going to, if you're just waiting around to see the weather forecast, you're going to be late to the party. So it's either you go on it, and I think once you saw one or two games start really getting steam, then everybody's like, okay, I got to go. Now, if I'm going to play a weather under, I got to go because it's going to move. So if you weren't getting on the the train early, then it's one of those where you probably missed the boat. And now it's just the only thing I would say for a lot of people is where if you're not really connected or watching the screen or checking the reports, it's one that can get away from you real quick on the overs and the unders, where as you said, if you missed it this morning, you don't want to be chasing anything that's moved 6, 8, 10, 12 points now. But on the flip side of it, you've really got to be watching it, the forecast and the screen to see when that'll start moving back up. So yeah, I agree. It'd be one of those, have a few weather notifications clued up, and we'll be watching to see, because otherwise, as you said, the stuff got absolutely hammered early today, and so now you're just kind of seeing when the buy point to come on the flip side of it will be.
Yeah, that was a good job by a producer there. I love it. Putting that graphic up there. Guess what? Dumbo bet the over in this game on the opener. I took over 44.5. I'm like, hey, 44.5. Did you just watch Clemson's pass defense? I mean, they stink. 44.5. And then, of course, I got negative EV. We'll see how the weather turns out. I'm guessing that'll be the worst weather game, just because that's the only one where I took an original position on the over. So I think that was very well said by Knish. I'm here to tell you that was as good. Obviously, we want you to play the best bets. We want you to win. but some of that macro level stuff is why you guys should be watching the show. And that's why Knish is a professional bettor, and a lot of people aren't. So any other games or things that, from a macro level before we get to the remaining best bets that you're thinking about this week?
You got a Heisman. I see a Heisman questionnaire in the chat. I agree. Stroud now has the firm control on it. I'm not. I had a small position on 250 as just kind of when you see the issue is that Ohio State's now kind of going into the coast mode, part of the schedule, and he's just going to be able to rack up numbers. So if they go 12-0, it's one of those. Am I jumping in to buy it at like plus 100, plus 125? No, but he's definitely in the pole position now where they're going to put up numbers, and the Big Ten, it's most of their schedule now looks significantly including the game against Wisconsin we talked about last week, where we're setting up for them to get boat raced, and they did get boat. I don't know outside of
Penn State on the road, maybe.
I would say, that would be the one that maybe they get tripped up on, but a lot of their challenging games, including Michigan State, and even the Michigan game now after last week, the Michigan pass rush I thought was very disappointing against Maryland. Rutgers, Sparty, Iowa, Northwestern, Indiana, Maryland, outside of that Penn State game, Michigan game. So he's just going to keep rolling. So it's going to be outside of it's going to be very tough for him. I think you'd be looking at probably like you needing a Michigan or a Penn State upstate to really open the door now. What do you think here?
Yeah, for summer, he's my biggest position. I think Circa had 3-1. I bet it. So I did bet like a dozen guys. So I'm not saying that was my one and only. You only need one. I'm not part of that group. But I don't know how he's not in the pole position right now. With that being said, it's still a flavor of the month award. It's not like what it was when I was growing up as a kid, where it was like a career achievement award.
For sure.
So whoever's having the best November.
Yeah, I agree. That's one of those things now. Like, you don't want to be too overweight on the as we talked about, like a 2-1 or 150, because a loss to Penn State, a loss to Michigan. We've seen the Heisman Award in a couple of the last 4 or 5 years basically flip at the last week of the year. Like, it go from one guy.
It was a favorite last year in the Michigan game.
Right. So, that it is a very, it reflects the culture of society these days, where people, they got the attention span of a goldfish, where some shiny object comes in November and has a big game, and Stroud, then it can switch like that. So I totally agree with you. It is a not one to be loading up, on the chalk too heavy.
Fair enough. Let's get the best bets. We mentioned a couple already. I'm a little inside information here. I think I got some good info on this last week. No one knew about it as far as Bowling Green's, their head coach and their quarterback, being out. I got a sneaky suspicion that they're both going to be in this week. And keep in mind, I know Akron almost upset Liberty, but Liberty was down to a third-string quarterback. This is a cheap number as far as I'm concerned on BG. I'm here to tell you, I think it's cheap. Even if the head coach and the quarterback are out, I actually like the backup quarterback. He's an FCS transfer that they had. So 6.5 for me. I know it's not ideal with BG, road favorite, but I think in this case they are still clearly superior to Akron. So I am going to lay the 6.5 on the road. Best bet for me on my alma mater, which I'm usually betting against. Do you have a pre-flop bet on this yet?
You know what? So I look now this is the boots on the ground here, the alumni here, but the info, that's one that, it opened up when I saw the 5 initially, and I said in my head, numbers wise, and then I said, that's cheap, but I had the questions about the things you mentioned there. So I totally agree with you. If we're thinking that the head coach and the quarterback are going to be okay going into that one, if you can, I'm going to log in as soon as we get off here and play some 6.5 based on what you just said. So I'm totally on board with you that is cheap. Some things had to go very right for Akron last week to finally be in a competitive ball game. But they are one of the teams I probably had a little too much faith in Joe Moorhead and loading up on the transfer portal going into the year. I'll admit there was some 250, I sprinkled some Akron Mac futures at huge numbers, thinking that, hey, if the Moorhead magic and he gets some of these transfers in, they're fucking terrible. Like don't get me wrong. They had a nice effort last week to at least make it a game out of it. But in games that I've seen them, the Michigan State game, the Tennessee game, where they haven't even.
They should have lost to St. Francis. I streamed that game and watched it because I bet the over.
They haven't even been able to compete with where it's like 50-point games before, and the other team just stops, before they could have won by 70 or 80. So yeah, I'm with you there that I'll join you on a Bowling Green position, with a little bit of that Mr. Powers Power special there, inside info. So I agree. Yeah, Bowling Green or nothing for me. And it'll be some Bowling Green here in a second.
You got a best bet?
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go, and this is one that I'm gonna. Some of my guys are on the flip side of this one. I like Duke under the field goal. I have not been impressed with Virginia. I know they came back and had a cover last week. This is a team that I'm buying on in Duke and I'm selling on in Virginia. That I wasn't significantly impressed with what Virginia was. I think their offensive line is horrible. Duke's offense looks pretty special. And again, the Duke's defense hasn't done much. This is another one that again, depending on weather, I'll be this is 100%. If it looked like it's going to be clear and overplay, now that it keeps stopping. There's even some 50.5 out there. This is one to keep an eye on. But I like Duke under the 3. I played some 1.5, and I'd be okay playing it at. Looks like there's some 2s out there that I like the Duke offense quite a bit. I like the changes they've made. I like Elko, and I think Tony Elliott is just a complete disaster.
I might be a bum. I bet Virginia on the opener. Don't read too much into that.
We'll go another hit the books head to head, baby.
Yeah, I might. But man, I'll tell you, I watched that Syracuse game last week. They were really poorly coached, Virginia. I mean, really bad. I tweeted it. I was like, are you kidding me? Bronco Mendenhall. What a large downgrade to Tony Elliott. So I like Mike Elko a lot too, but my goodness, I was anti-Duke coming in the season. I bet under 3.5. I liked Elko. I just didn't think he inherited anything. And to see them favored in a conference game, that's a little too much respect. So yeah, the second game, I'm about probably to go 0-2. That sucks. But I'll butt heads with you. You can take that best bet, but I'll go head to head to another disagreement there. We might have a third disagreement. I'll give you another best bet. Duke just played Kansas. Kansas has covered 7 in a row, dating back to last season. I'm on the other side this week, and I was anti-Iowa State last week. And it's not like I've been fading Kansas. I mean, I do try to take care of my pocketbook a little bit, but my numbers are really super strong on Iowa State this week. A little surprising, but I think the number should be 6. So I like Iowa State. I'll lay the 3.5. I bet you can find, looking at the board there. Oh wow, Pro Line. Gotta love Pro Line, 1.5. Sure, I love that bet. Even at it's super juiced up there. But Iowa State for me, I like them quite a bit. I'll even lay the 3.5.
Yeah, no, you're not going to get a disagreement from me on that. That one's had some little fascinating market war there between it got the 2.5 steam and then some buyback on Kansas at the 3.5. But I agree with you. I think we've hit the kind of the top there on Kansas. And don't get me wrong, Leopold, insane job what he's done there. But their defense is still leaky, and I think Iowa State will be much more prepared defensively to kind of stop what Kansas wants to do on offense. And I agree. I think you're getting some value there in the number. So yeah, it would be an Iowa State at 3 or better or nothing for me in that one. So I unfortunately not another. We can't add that one to hit the books head to head because I'm with you there on that one.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. Iowa State's a program that's probably not going to overlook Kansas. They'll have a little bit of respect. They're coming off the loss. Can ill afford to lose back-to-back games. Kansas probably riding high after a big win over Duke with a lot of national publicity last week. That 3-3-5 defense that Iowa State runs, unique, probably capable of slowing down Kansas. We saw them, crush Kansas last year before Kansas got going. But, yeah, I think Iowa State's the right side there. So I'm pretty comfortable in that one. That's one of my favorite plays of the week. Any other best bets for Mr. Knish before we get out of here?
Did you throw Illinois in earlier in the best bets?
I did not throw. You're going to throw Illinois in there.
You know what? So this is one like we talked about James Madison last week, where I played some above 10 and above. I'm still okay with it at a touchdown. I don't think
going head to head with Mr. Muscles.
And again, this is what we got him last week, baby. UNLV with a checkbox for Joey K. So we'll go head to head with them again. I'll take Illinois there with the touchdown again. I know that it's paying at 7 now. I really liked it when it was. We got a little FanDuel there at 7.5. But hey, I'll give it out at 7. If I can go get that 7.5, I like it. Definitely getting. I'm super down. I've just been down on Wisconsin the entire season. And now we've faded him last week versus Ohio State. Illinois, I don't think. I don't think there's much between. I can make the legitimate case, that I think Illinois' roster has more talent than Wisconsin. I think there's guys that can play in the NFL for Illinois, and Wisconsin it doesn't have many of these guys. And I get it; they've had the continuity and Jim Leonard and that. I am really down on Wisconsin this year, and Illinois has impressed me. Their defensive front has impressed me. Tom DeVito's playing relatively well. They're able to line up and run the ball. And just stylistically, this is Wisconsin, a game that I don't want to lay a touchdown in. So I liked Illinois, and again, I bet it at some higher numbers. But if you can still get a 7, I'm okay with that. Fighting Illini, it's just two teams for me going in polar opposite directions. And hey, maybe they get right this week, and Wisconsin, but I just don't see it. I don't see. I think Illinois has playmakers Wisconsin doesn't have. So yeah, Fighting Illini for me. It wouldn't surprise. And again, this is from a guy that has some Illinois season win under stuff going in. That it's tough to back Burt. It's one of those where you plug your nose back in some of these coaches, but I don't think there's much between these teams, to be honest with you. So give me a Fighting Illini.
I bet the under in the game. I mean, Circa opened 42.5. A couple knuckleheads bet over up to 45.5 in like 10 minutes after the open.
Is the Hurricane going to reach all the way to Madison?
Were you one of them?
No, I don't have a total position in this one.
Okay, I was going to say,
I'm not.
Some people, they moved the total up 3 points. I'm like, I'll take those 3 points. I thought the opener was good. So yeah, I think it's a rock fight. Illinois' defense, I think it's like 11 out of the last 12 games have allowed 24 points or less. It seems like a typical Big Ten game for me. And you didn't mention he probably buried the lead. Bielema going back to Wisconsin.
I think the second week in a row I buried this coach lead with the TCU last week. And I gotta get a little more professional in the show notes here with I agree, bro. Coming back to whiskey, baby, the land where it all came together for him. But yeah, I think I can't get to a touchdown here in this one. I agree. If I had there looks like 44 pretty much out. This is pretty widely available. Yeah, it'd be an under for me, and I like the side. So,
any other best bets before we call it a day?
I think that wraps it for me at the moment. There'll be a couple that I got the eye on, depending on some some weather, some stuff later in the week. But I think for now that's pretty good, and jump on there to bet some Bowling Green.
Yeah, he was correct last week, so we'll see. I come on in the air and say, give him some praise, and he'll probably be wrong. But I'm here to tell you, even if he's wrong, I think the number's still a little short, and I expect it to close higher. So, yeah, I do like Bowling Green quite a bit. And if you missed any of the show, remember, you can play back the show on podcast. That'll be up later, and also on YouTube. And if you missed any of the best bets, make sure you're checking out BetStamp. Hit the Books is on there. You can check out all our best bets for the records. He is the man, the myth, the legend, Joey Knish. I'm Brad Powers. This was Hit the Books, part of the Hammer Betting Network.